Now, as I mentioned earlier, US President Donald Trump has left the G7. He's in the air now. He left Canada and he's on his way back to Washington as we speak. He skipped that meeting with our Prime Minister to return to DC. He's dealing with the Middle East crisis. Here's the President speaking just before he left.
You probably see what I see, and I have to be back as soon as I can and have dinner with these wonderful leaders, and then I get on the plane. I have to be back early.
Yeah, I caught up with our US analyst Kristin Tate earlier, and the first thing I put to her was that it was understandable that the President is shooting through given what's unfolding.
Yes, of course. This is what's going on in Iran now is just consuming the president. He has made it very clear that Iran must not have a nuclear weapon, and he's trying to make sure that doesn't happen right now.
Yeah, it's extraordinary what he said in a Truth Social post. He said that Iran should have signed the deal that he told them to sign. What a shame and a waste of human life, he says. Simply stated that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. I said it over and over again. Everyone should immediately evacuate Tehran. Now, this is happening on the ground. People are leaving Tehran. It sounds like, we can't jump the gun here, but it sounds like the US military at the president's behest is about to get actively involved.
Well, we don't know that yet. One thing that Trump uses, a tool he uses, which we know from his first term, is unpredictability. And just because Trump says Tehran should evacuate does not necessarily mean that we're about to bomb the city or anything like that. It could just be, highly publicized threat to force to force the nation into civilized international cooperation. But look, Chris, here's kind of the bottom line. I'm actually very grateful we have a leader like President Trump in this situation. It's exactly 10 years ago, if you can believe it, that he came down that golden escalator and announced his intent to run for his first term. When he did that, he remade the Republican Party. He made the Republican Party into no longer the party of these forever wars, of nation building that just goes on and on forever. But you have to keep in mind, he's also not an isolationist. He has been very clear that Iran must not get a nuclear weapon. And he is willing to use force when necessary. We've seen that again in his first term. I'm very glad we have him as a leader. It's a very difficult needle to thread, but if anyone can do it, keeping his base happy and keeping peace with this situation and Israel and Iran, Trump is the man who can probably do it.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the 10-year anniversary there of Trump basically entering politics by coming down that escalator. Perhaps more to the point when it comes to the current situation, that it's almost 10 years to the week that Barack Obama claimed he'd signed the deal that was going to stop Iran getting nuclear weapons. So everybody agrees we shouldn't let Iran get nuclear weapons. So it's good now that there's an opportunity, thanks to Netanyahu and to Trump, that we might actually prevent this forever. And Donald Trump, you're right, he's still talking about doing this with an agreement. Here's more of what he had to say in Canada.
Israel is doing very well, as you probably noticed, and I gave Iran 60 days, and they said no, and the 61st you saw what happened. Day 61, so I'm in constant touch. And as I've been saying, I think a deal will be signed, or something will happen, but a deal will be signed. And I think Iran is foolish not to sign one.
Well, let's hope this is the way it pans out, actually, because obviously Iran has suffered enormous losses already. Its military and governmental facilities have been damaged, some of its energy resources. Let's hope they see sense and do a deal to repudiate, get rid of their nuclear weapons program forever. But I've got to get your thoughts, Kristin, on the other aspect of this, and that is by Donald Trump shooting through early from the G7, he's not going to get his meeting, his first face-to-face meeting with our Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese. He's been stranded. He's jilted there up in Canada, and it's not going to happen. That's pretty embarrassing for Anthony Albanese. Do you think it would have even crossed Donald Trump's mind?
Look, yeah, it's definitely embarrassing, but I do think that Trump, like all Americans, values the relationship between the US and Australia. Australia has been a very good friend to us here in the United States. And, I have no doubt that a very mutually beneficial trade deal is going to come between these two great nations at some point. But obviously, Trump did have to deal with this very pressing situation. And also, this is not very urgent for Trump. America does have an upper hand with Australia. So I just don't think he sees the meeting as a point of urgency. But I think everything will end well between the two nations in the trade deal eventually. I also do want to just say that your PM has made some very unwise comments about Trump in the past. So, as silly as it may sound, Trump may hold that against him. Trump takes personal comments about him very seriously, and it's not wise making comments about Trump that may not be flattering if you hope to do deals with him or negotiate with him.
You're absolutely right, Kristin, but even more than that, our Prime Minister has made himself completely worthless when it comes to the current issue that's dominating the President's time, and that is the Middle East issue and the war between Israel and Iran. He hasn't been critical of Iran. He hasn't been supportive of Israel. In fact, he spent the past 18 months criticising Israel. That makes him next to useless to Donald Trump.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That is exactly right. So, I do think Trump even still, will have a great meeting with your PM eventually. He's said flattering things about him before, but it's just not at the top of his list right now.
Indeed. Thanks for joining us, Kristin. I appreciate it.